Alright, another MLB expansion video. This time we're going to Asia, something MLB probably wishes they could do. This was suggested by a few of you out there. If I say baseball is huge in Asia, most will probably agree with me. Others might correctly say it's only East Asia. And others may even more correctly point out that it's only the three easternmost countries on the continent. And Asia is the world's largest continent. Baseball only claims a small part of it. But that's still more than a lot of other leagues can claim. It would give them a good starting point to plant their flag on the continent and begin a westward expansion. The three countries that do play baseball, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, are just across the ocean from North America. They've got the money, and they have major league-sized stadiums. But distance, of course, keeps this from ever becoming a reality. MLB is played all 7 days of the week, and the travel times would be ridiculous. So in order to make this work, the Asian teams would need their own divisions, so that most of their games are played against other Asian cities. They'd still play teams from North America too. They'd probably spend several weeks on the road playing in different American cities, then return for a long homestand. Likewise, when teams from North America visit Asia, they would make it a long road trip, then return home and be rewarded with several series at home. It would be really hard to schedule all that, but they could probably work it out somehow. We can also imagine that in the future, a few hours have been shaved off that long cross-Pacific flight. And now this seems perfectly possible. So for this, we can't just start with a little two-team expansion. We need an entire division, 4 teams at a minimum. And it's best to have one in the NL, one in the AL. So we're going to start with 8. And of course they'll want to start with the 3 countries I've already mentioned. You don't have to worry about whether a baseball team will get support in those countries. If Major League Baseball could put a team there, it would work. So if you take away the distance factor, this becomes a situation that MLB can't possibly lose, though they might still find a way to mess it up. The easiest thing to do would be to just combine Japan's NPB, Korea's KBO, and Taiwan's CPBL, and there you've got a 27-team league, soon to be 28 with a new team on the way in Taiwan. That's almost the same size as MLB, and you could just take the champion from this new Asian League and the World Series champion and have them compete in a true World Championship Series. That was actually brought up by a previous NPB commissioner, and I made a video about that idea a couple years ago. I discussed the several ways they could go about doing it and the pros and cons of each. If you want to see that, link is in the description. But today we're exploring the possibility of a single Trans-Pacific Major League Baseball. Not that it's going to happen, but what it might look like if they tried it out. In this plan, I would have the 3 countries keep their domestic leagues. If you watch my video, An MLB of Europe, or the one about MLB expansion into Latin America, this will sound familiar. The leagues of those countries would be like a farm system for the new MLB teams. In Europe, I had a single team drawing all the best players from the domestic league, so it was like an all-star team with all the league's best players. In Mexico, it was one MLB team drawing players from 6 LMB teams. Japan's NPB is closer to the MLB talent level than any other baseball league in the world. But if you took the best NPB team in any given year and had them play a full MLB regular season, they would have a tough time. Take 3 NPB teams and only use the best players from each team, and now you have one that might be able to compete with major league teams. So we'll want 4 teams in Japan, each one drawing players from 3 NPB teams. They'll probably want to keep the foreign player limit where it is so that the team remains mostly Japanese, but has the foreign talent to stay competitive. And the foreign talent would improve drastically. They'd no longer be taking players that are struggling in MLB. They would be competing with major league teams for the best players, even though they'd only have a few spots available for them. So now we just need 4 cities. Tokyo obviously gets a team. With 37 million people, the world's largest metropolitan area, it can certainly support a major league franchise. And some will try to argue that Tokyo should have 2 teams, but remember I said that NPB will still be in operation, and there are 5 NPB teams in the Tokyo area, which also includes Chiba, Saitama, and Yokohama. So this would actually be professional baseball team number 6 for Tokyo. Osaka is another obvious choice. 2nd largest metro in Japan, 10th largest in the world. 2 NPB teams are in the area, and more NPB players come from this area than any other area of Japan. Baseball is definitely a big thing there. Then you'd like to have 1 city in the north and 1 in the south. In the north we go with Sapporo on the island of Hokkaido. They might just name it Hokkaido, but I'll go with city names here. The city has about 2 million people, even more in the surrounding area, so it's definitely big enough. Home to 1 NPB team, the Nippon Ham Fighters, the team Otani and Darvish came from. The last city will be in the south, and that will be Fukuoka, on the island of Kyushu. Metro area of 2.5 million, home to 1 NPB team, the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, one of the best supported teams in the country. A major league team in this city would have no problem filling the seats. And now we have 4 cities. If you know anything about Japanese cities, you'll know that I've left out 1 major urban area, and that is Nagoya. It's got 10 million people in the area, 3rd largest in Japan. But if I'm only selecting 4 cities in Japan, I want them to represent different areas of the country, and not too many clustered in the center. And Nagoya is located right between Tokyo and Osaka. A couple other NPB cities missing here, Hiroshima and Sendai. With these 4 new Major League teams, they would probably continue with the NPB practice of playing several home games in other nearby cities. So the Fukuoka team would play a home series in Hiroshima, the Sapporo team would play a few games in Sendai, and I'd imagine the Tokyo and Osaka teams would play a home series in Nagoya, among other cities in the area. Also, it's very likely they would use the region name rather than one city's name for these new teams. They'd probably be called Kanto, Kansai, Hokkaido, and Kyushu. But since the city names are more familiar to you all, I'll call them Tokyo, Osaka, Sapporo, and Fukuoka. Now we're going to put 2 teams in Korea. There are 10 teams in the KBO, so each team would take the best players from 5 teams. You have to put 1 in Seoul, another huge city we're talking about here, the 4th largest metropolitan area in the world. And it's easy to imagine which KBO teams this new MLB team would get its players from. 3 KBO teams are located in Seoul, 1 in neighboring Incheon, and another just south in Daejeon. Then the other 5 teams are spread out in different cities across the south part of the country. The best place to go would be the southeast corner to the city of Busan. Not only is it the 2nd largest city with over 3 million people, it's also considered the baseball capital of Korea, home to 1 KBO team, the Lotte Giants. And then we will have 1 team in Taiwan using players from the 5 and soon to be 6 teams of the CPBL. Even after taking the best players from all the teams, they wouldn't be able to field a team close to being able to compete with major league teams. They would have to raise the foreign player limit, and local players would become the minority on their team. But I think for the chance to field a major league team on their own soil, fans in Taiwan would accept that. They'd still have the CPBL for teams of mostly Taiwanese players. And same goes for Korea and Japan. They could adjust the number of foreign players as necessary to stay competitive. And the city in Taiwan would of course be the capital and largest city, Taipei. It's a metro area of over 7 million, home to 2 CPBL teams. And actually, if this were really going to happen soon, it would be good timing. The 40,000-seat Taipei Dome is under construction and expected to be finished soon, and it will be used for baseball, though it doesn't have a tenant team. That brings us up to 7 teams, which means we need 1 more to meet our goal of 2 4-team divisions in each league, so we'll have to go out of the comfort zone and into a country where baseball is not a dominant sport. From here on out, we can't rely on local talent to help fill up the roster. The team would be entirely made up of foreign players. And the first city to try and expand this league beyond the big 3 in Asia would be Manila. Baseball is not a big sport in the Philippines. Basketball and soccer do much better there. They have an amateur league and some proper stadiums, but nothing too big. But the country has a long history with baseball, and it would be such a big deal for them if they had a major league team in the capital city. There may not be a lot of interest in baseball now, but this would be a sure way to create new fans. Right now, it's hard to imagine people in the Philippines being able to afford the cost of attending a major league game. Just imagine that incomes and PI have caught up with the other 3 countries by this time, or that they get some special reduced price there. Alright, now that we've added 8 teams from Asia, the total number of major league teams is up to 40. 1 new division is the AL Asia: Tokyo, Fukuoka, Busan, and Taipei. The NL Asia is Osaka, Sapporo, Seoul, and Manila. Not sure how the rest of MLB would look. They could either keep the 3 5-team divisions in each league that they presently have, or they could go to 4-team divisions so that everything is balanced. But here I'm just concerned with the Asian divisions. But 5-team divisions are much more desirable, so they'll want 2 more teams. Time for expansion again. Looking for 2 places with large populations and high incomes. And here I would go with Hong Kong and Singapore. Now we're in a couple places where baseball is really unknown. They do have national baseball teams in Hong Kong and Singapore, but the average resident knows nothing of the game. You can be sure that a long time would pass from the launch of the 4-team Asian divisions and the next expansion. In that time, MLB would hold annual regular season series in other Asian countries to try and grow the game. So you could have Tokyo versus Taipei in Singapore, or Seoul versus Manila in Hong Kong. After years of building up their audience, they'd be ready for those 2 to be the next expansion cities. Hong Kong and Singapore have the wealth, large populations, other sporting events do well there, and they get lots of tourists and business travelers. Sort of like how MLB has targeted London and Paris in Europe, even though there aren't many fans there to start with. They would hope to do the same thing in Hong Kong and Singapore, since they would have other teams nearby. And unlike the MLB games in Europe, they would hold these games knowing that expansion is a real possibility. Singapore would be the first team on the Southeast Asian mainland, and their farm teams would be located in other countries in Southeast Asia to help introduce the game in the area. The Hong Kong team would give MLB 1 foot into China. They've tried to get something going there for a while now, but with only a little success. Putting an MLB team right on their doorstep would be a lot more effective. Now we've got 5 team divisions. Hong Kong joins the AL Asia, along with Tokyo, Fukuoka, Busan, and Taipei. Singapore joins NL Asia, with Osaka, Sapporo, Seoul, and Manila. It's starting to look more like a continental thing rather than just the countries all the way to the east. So now it's time to include the biggest one, with the most people, and that is China. A lot of things could go wrong by including a couple mainland Chinese cities, especially with there already being a team in Taipei. Just imagine the future is different, or that MLB has a couple backup cities in other countries they can use just in case. I figure if I included Havana and Caracas in my Latin American expansion video, I should include these 2 cities here. The first one is Beijing, the capital city. With over 21 million people in the city, it's reasonable to think you can find 30 to 40,000 to show up regularly for a baseball game. They haven't had much luck attracting fans in Beijing so far, but an MLB team in the city might do the trick. Good location too, it's near the East Coast, not far from South Korea. Then there's the largest city in China, Shanghai, an even better location, surrounded by Beijing, Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. It's a good sports city, home to NBA star Yao Ming, and annual host of the Formula One Chinese Grand Prix. Beijing joins the AL Asia with Tokyo, Fukuoka, Busan, Taipei, and Hong Kong. 6 team divisions are the most you'll ever want to have. The NL East had 6 teams 10 years ago. Shanghai becomes a member of the NL Asia with Osaka, Sapporo, Seoul, Manila, and Singapore. But now that we've got 12 teams in Asia, everyone wants one more 3-team expansion, so we'll have 15. And then we can create a whole new league, which would be so much easier. We could add more teams to Japan and Korea, but like I said before, they will still have their own leagues, so they'll have enough teams already. We could try to move westward in China, but even when imagining a brighter future, I'd still like to keep it to a minimum. 2 mainland Chinese cities on the East Coast, plus Hong Kong. We won't go to India, Pakistan, or any other South Asian countries. If we try to cover the whole Asian continent, we'll be here all day, so we're sticking with the eastern half. The last 3 teams will all be in Southeast Asia. I said before that Singapore's minor league teams would be located in other Southeast Asian countries, maybe Manila's farm teams as well. After years of hosting minor league teams, the biggest cities in the region are hungry for a big league team of their own, so let's give it to them. 1 goes to Jakarta. Indonesia has the 4th largest population in the world, behind China, India, and the US. Java is the world's most populous island, and Jakarta is the capital city. The ballpark would have to be built somewhere outside of the city since the city is sinking, which is why they're building a new capital city, but the name would still be Jakarta. Baseball is played there, but not by many. After years of hosting the AAA team for nearby Singapore, that would change, and they get their own team. Bangkok is next. The capital of Thailand has over 10 million people. Sports other than soccer don't do very well there, but baseball does exist in the country. The national team competed in the qualifier for the 2013 WBC. And a lot of Japanese companies have factories there, so lots of company employees from Japan spend a few years working there. Might help get support for a new team going there. The last one goes to Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. Metro population of 20 million is more than enough. It's actually the 2nd largest city in Vietnam, behind Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon. But Hanoi is seen as more of a sports city, so it gets the last expansion team. And now we have a 15-team Asian League. Combined with the American and National Leagues, MLB now has 45 teams. Here's how the Asian League is divided. In the Asia East, we have the 4 teams from Japan and the 1 from Taiwan: Tokyo, Osaka, Sapporo, Fukuoka, and Taipei. These divisions won't follow exact geographical lines, but I think it'll work better if they're grouped this way. The Asia Central consists of the Korean and Chinese teams: Seoul, Busan, Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai. And the Asia West is an all Southeast Asian division: Manila, Singapore, Jakarta, Bangkok, and Hanoi. One more thing about these Southeast Asian cities: they'd all need roofed stadiums. Summertime in that area gets a lot of rain. Now that we have 3 leagues in Major League Baseball, there are a couple ways we can arrange the postseason. One is to give the league champion with the best record a bye to the World Championship Series. Another way, the one I prefer, is to award a lucky loser to one of the teams that lost their League Championship Series, like they do in Mexico. That is, the team that did the best in the League Championship Series but did not win it gets to move on. For example, let's say in the ALCS, the Oakland A's beat the Detroit Tigers 4-1. In the NLCS, the Washington Nationals beat the Pittsburgh Pirates 4-2. And in the Asia Championship Series, Tokyo beats Seoul 4-3. The Seoul team would move on to a semifinal round with the 3 league champions, because out of the losing teams, they came the closest to winning. How realistic is this expansion plan I just proposed? Not realistic at all. Fun to talk about, but it won't happen. A more realistic scenario would be that NPB, KBO, and CPBL combine to form a single Super League, then maybe create a lower league with teams in other Asian countries. and it might look something like what I put out here today. But like I said before, I've already done a video about the possibility of a Japan-Korea-Taiwan league. Another more realistic possibility is that a winter league is put together in Southeast Asia. As I said before, the summers there are really wet. A winter league would make more sense, and then they could attract players from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan during their off-season, and try to raise the Southeast Asian League's level of talent so that they can hold a meaningful competition with the Australian League. But anyway, that's how I would do it. Let me know how you would do it down in the comments. That's all for this one, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.